What's up, YouTube? I'm Wel-Don. Welcome back to the channel Wel-Don Tanks. It's kind of dark in here, but let me show you one of the coolest things that I finished in the fish room. And then we're going to talk about the new rack behind me. Ready? I freaking love that button. Alright guys, so still working on projects down here in the fish room. We are making progress. But when I'm filming this video, hopefully the coming weekend that I'm actually filming, so it's a Monday night I'm filming, so like the Friday after, if that makes any sense in that dimensional time frame I just gave you, we're hoping to get fish in here. Like, we are on the final stretch to getting this fish room up and running 100%, and I cannot wait. So, you know, I'm in a very small fish room, right? Very tight space, and as we've changed things over the course of building the fish room, right? We went from having the 220 gallon tank along this wall. We were gonna do a 90 cube. We were gonna do, you know, this original rack behind me. Like, so many things have changed. So the 220's gone, got a video on that. The 90 cube is gone, got a video on that. But then we brought in the 60 gallon cube, which was a nice tank. It was great, nothing wrong with it. And it was actually going to sit on the wall that we put up that unconventional shelving system that we're going to be putting some tanks on. So that's where it was going to sit, but it still just, it kind of took up some space. I mean, everything takes up space, right? But even with this unconventional shelving system I'm doing, the tanks are kind of in your face, but it still gives you so much extra room that excuse me, I'm getting so choked up over this. No, I'm just kidding. I love the way the space is working now, though. I really do. I feel much more comfortable in here. I'm more excited about this. Like, I'm already just looking around the room and already see tanks, you know, full of fry and breeding groups going on. And that's where my passion lies. So that's what we're going to move forward with. So part of that is I moved the 60 cube out. We're no longer doing the 60 cube. I was going to set that up as a very nice display tank for the discus and, you know, wait for some to pair off. But I decided to just move them to a breeding tank already. You know, let them pair off naturally and then keep that pair and move forward from there. So we originally, after moving the 60 cube, you know, from that first wall, I moved it over to this corner after I decided to do this second rack. These are the, see if I can show you here. Make sure you know what I'm talking about. So you haven't seen all of this yet. We'll talk everything in a full tour eventually, but it's the same Husky rack that we've been using, or that I've set up before, that, you know, holds 5,000 pounds, 1,000 pounds a shelf. So it's a great system to use, and it's fairly inexpensive. So the cube was going to go to the left of the new one, and it tucked perfectly in. It really did kind of like tuck perfectly in. And as I came down again one night, and I was just like, man, it just doesn't flow. It just doesn't give me that satisfaction I'm looking for. So I decided to change it. Now, hindsight's always 20/20, and if I had decided I was no longer going to do that 60 gallon cube before I put this 4-foot Husky rack up, I would have just bought the 6-foot version and just had the 6-foot rack right here. And that's something I actually debated on, you know, about doing, was putting a 6-foot rack right here instead of the 220. But then I decided to do a 4-foot rack and keep the 60 cube. But now that the 60 cube is gone, there's no way I'm going to break down this 4-foot rack. It's a nightmare. So now to get to the good stuff. So in its place, I just built a simple wooden rack that's going to allow me to add an additional extra 6 gallon tanks. Jeez. All right, this rack behind me will hold 6 10-gallon tanks. There we go. Freak. 6 10-gallon tanks is what this rack will hold. So that's an additional 6 tanks in the fish room. Major tongue twister, I apologize. So let's get into the construction of this, because this is actually the easiest rack that I have ever built. It's the easiest stand I've ever built, and it's cheap. It's really what it is. It's cheap, but it's very effective. All right, let me do my best to show you what we're working with here on this rack. So again, it's a fairly simple system that I did. It's really hard to get a good camera angle in this fish room just because it is so small, but everything is just 2x4. This is all 2x4, and all we did was we built 3 of these frames. So it's literally like build a box to match the dimensions of your tank. So the 10-gallon tanks are going to sit lengthwise, so 2 per shelf, but it's going to allow the frames to be supported on all 4 corners, 2 tanks, so 6 down the entire rack. And then all we did was just use 4 support 2x4s that determines the actual overall height of the rack. So 2, 4, and then 2 down here, and then we've already connected into the drain line going around the room. And that's what these pipes are here in the back. I use some 45-degree angles just to make sure we get the proper flow leaving this rack. And then down here, we've put 2 T's in to allow the bottom 2 tanks to drain. So this will be set up on the auto water change system. But again, with these 4 supports, it's that simple. The hardest part of this rack was actually leveling out each shelf, each brace for it to connect to the 4 posts. So everything, the shelves themselves were built with 2.5-inch screws going into 2x4, and then each corner got a 3.5-inch bolt, a 3-inch bolt, something like that. Let me grab them here really quick. Let me show you what I'm talking about. All right, so this is what each corner is screwed in with. So on each frame, every corner, you can kind of see right here on the edges, each one of these got these bolts going through them. So this is incredibly strong. And again, I only needed it to hold 10-gallon tanks. That's all I needed. So again, if you needed a quick rack to set up 5-gallon tanks, 10-gallon tanks, up to 20-gallon tanks, this will support the weight no issue. And you don't even need to use these bolts. If you do, I recommend pre-drilling, as I started splitting some wood as I was going through. But I definitely made sure to go back, pre-drill, and get the support in. And then it was very simple too. If I just reconnected up into my air system, that's all I did here. So instead of doing the PVC pipe all the way around the room, I just built closed loops around each system and then connected them all together that eventually go back in and connect to the main air pump going through the wall right there. But again, it just allowed me to do air on this system. So we'll have, each tank will be run by sponge filters, and then we tie it into the auto water change system again. So what's nice is that all 3 racks in the room now are each on their own valve. Very simple, very efficient. So again, overall, I think this is the cheapest rack I've ever built. And for lighting, I just found some more of these LED T5 lights that I was using on the 4-foot racks, but I just found them in a 2-foot version. The only difference is the actual temperature or the color of the light. I guess the temperature of the light's slightly different. This one's a little softer. This one's a little more like a daylight bulb. So not a huge noticeable difference. It's not going to affect anything in the fish room. It's kind of personal preference, really. But again, guys, this was the easiest and cheapest rack that I've ever built. All right, everybody, I hope that gave you a good overall look of that rack that we built. Again, very cheap, very simple, very efficient. And again, all I needed to do was hold 10-gallon tanks, but it allowed me to add 6 more 10-gallon tanks for breeding, right? So that's more fry tanks. That's more, German blue ram tanks, discus grout tanks, Japanese rice fish tanks. The possibilities are endless. So very excited to now have everything kind of set up the way I want it to. Now it's just the finishing touches on the fish room. So if you have not joined us on this entire journey, if you're just finding my channel now, feel free to go back and watch everything. I should have set up a playlist that will allow you to see everything. And feel free to hit that subscribe button. Check out what we're doing here. We are nowhere near close to being done. Well, that's a lie. We're close to being done, but then the real fun starts of where we get to move the fish in and get fish breeding in, but the different projects of that. So still got some ideas cooking, but leave me a comment. Would you be interested in building this rack of your own? Is this something you would utilize in your fish room? You can really customize this to be whatever you needed it to be. Mine's a little rough, mainly because I was able to reuse some 2x4 from a previous stand I built that I'm no longer using. And then I just used some black spray paint just to kind of give it that finished look. So again, guys, thank you so much for joining me. I love doing this. I love sharing this adventure with you. And I am looking forward to, really getting into the nitty gritty and the meat of this. So very excited. So again, thank you for joining me, and we will talk to you guys in the next one.